Okay, testing everyone. Can you hear us? I hope we're live.
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. We have a special guest on today, Tony Rodrigues. You got his bio?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so
Yeah, it looks like we're live.
Okay, so about Tony. Tony Rodrigues is a secret space and classified programs experiencer and the author of 3 best-selling books, sharing his personal account. In addition, he teaches remote viewing, remote influence phenomena, and long-term memory therapy. Awesome. Hosted weekly on his Patreon. Tony actively speaks and hosts conferences focused on truth exploration, helping others delve into deeper understandings of hidden realities. Tony will also be a speaker. Oh, well, yeah, we're excited to introduce Tony. And okay, I just want to
send you the link in your Facebook chat.
there you are. Hi, Tony.
Cool.
Welcome.
Thanks. Hi. Good afternoon. It's afternoon for everybody.
Yes.
And you'll also be speaking along with us at the Rise of the Guardians conference in Sedona in March.
That's going to be a blast. It's in a great venue too. It's in a big venue. It's over there in West Sedona, and it'll be a good time. So it's great to have an excuse to head out to Sedona. I originally was scheduled to go on an Egypt trip. I was finally saving up to go on one of the Egypt tours, but it just didn't work out, and I had to back out of it. And it was the same exact time as that conference. And my good friend Darion, I always mess his last name up, but Rion from Team Lights, whom I love to death, is a gentleman and a scholar. Invited me. They said, "Man, come on, speak at my conference." And so I jumped on board with that. It's a great lineup. There's a lot of great people, including you guys. A lot of great people there. I'm looking forward to meeting. And so that's going to be a blast. And then also, I don't really get to do many conferences where I go home at night and just drive there and go home. So it's not going to need the long travel and everything. I did a lot of travel. I was on the road a lot last year, in 2024. And so it's nice. It's winding down.
Yes. Well, as you said, it's going to be an event of transcendence. You know, there is going to be so much going on in a very united form, you know, like all of us pursuing the same mission, which is, you know, the expansion of consciousness, the rising of all those guardians that inhabit within us in order to generate that humanity that will be thriving throughout all this stage of evolution. So yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, so very happy that we will be there sharing with you. It excited me. It excited me a lot when I knew that you were going to be part of the conference. And yeah, and mostly in such a magical place, which is Sedona.
Sedona is magical, and for me, it's been a career move to come here because I can be myself. So when you read my bio and like read my books about involvement in the secret space program, and then actually digging up evidence about it, in my recent book, Beyond Sight, that in my most recent one, there was a lot of evidence I dug up, and that was in the remote viewing realm. And there was some dangerous info I put out in that book that is still it's still hard to navigate. But when you do all that, and I tell people that I'm a teacher remote viewing, that I'm a SSP here in Sedona, nobody bats an eye. It's not a big deal. Yes. Where back in Michigan, when I said that, I'd get the 1,000-yard stare, like I was a kooky. And maybe it is kooky, but there's a lot of info, a lot of evidence that I've dug up. So, and people, I can sit with any skeptic all day long and say, you got to explain the evidence away. And so that's why I talk about it publicly. And it's still going. I'm still finding new stuff. But living in Sedona has enabled me to really expand what I do a lot. It's really been a career move with not only the people that accept me here, but people that are also working on the same stuff. Okay. And we can kind of network and we're working together now. It's been really a smart move for me.
What aspects of Sedona would you recommend to tell people that are thinking about moving there and stuff? Like, what are they in for when they move to the area? And also,
Well,
like, waste power, ETs. What kind of things have you come across?
that's a good bunch of questions. So I was unprepared for when I moved here, what it was going to be like. So there is a very real energy that is different in Sedona than it is everywhere else. I think that because it's essentially in a bowl, it used to be a sea. It was an inland sea, a large inland sea, a million years ago, or however long ago, 600,000 years. And it carved away the dirt. And so the red rocks are what's under all of Arizona, but it got washed away, so you don't see it. So that layer of iron. And so your Sedona is actually in a bowl of iron. So I can sit from my house and watch storms come across the desert. You know, a few months ago in the monsoons, the storms would come across the desert and you would just see the cloud rain slowly coming. And as soon as it got to Sedona, where the iron is exposed, you'd see lightning. So, the storm would wait till it got to Sedona, and then all the lightning would go off because all the iron content is exposed. Mm-hmm. And so you get the vortexes that people can very clearly feel. The airport vortex is amazing. Like, everybody told me about it, and I was like, yeah, whatever, sure. And I went up there, and I was amazed. There is a very real clearing feeling there. You can feel it. To an empathic person that is already highly energetically sensitive, Sedona has the vortexes are real. It's a real thing. For one. For two, moving here is pricey. It's a tourist town, and a lot of people want to move here. There's a lot of Scottsdale, Arizona is the most actively building up place in the United States right now. More money is getting invested into large architecture projects in Scottsdale, Arizona than anywhere else in the United States. So there's a lot of wealth in Phoenix and Scottsdale. And during the summer, when it's 120 down there, it's 109 here. And so they come up here, they get a second house up here. And that's why the real estate is crazy. So very wealthy people come to Sedona all summer long because it's 10 degrees cooler, and Flagstaff too. But Sedona, because of the views, and there's already infrastructure, and they have ordinances here. There's no Walmart. It's not commercialized. So you got Whole Foods and you got art galleries and things. So it's one of those type of places. So it's expensive. So I'd be advised. So when you visit here, the food costs more. Everything's a little bit more pricey. We drive to the next town over, Cottonwood and Prescott, to get all our stuff to go shopping and everything. That, and then you can network. There's everything under the sun here. So it's like Coffee and Crystals is a business here. So there's a place called Coffee and Crystals. There's crystal shops, there's auric readings, there's past life readings on the side of the road, big signs that say past life reading. So there's not a lot of places in America that it's that condensed, where there's a lot of psychic services, there's a lot of spiritual things, there's healing centers here. I was talking to a few people, Dan Winter, who has his Therify. He's like, yeah, we got an office in Sedona. So there's a lot of technology here, alternative healing technology that is alive and well here. So Sedona is a unique place. So I guess does that answer your question, Sean? I don't want to. I feel like I'm a human brochure at this point.
How's the place of power and ETs and like remote viewing in the area have been?
Well, we've had some issues actually with remote viewing. So there is definitely an underground military presence here. There is definitely a lot of activity in the skies. So I sit out at night in my yard, and just the other night, 3 nights ago, I saw craft flying by. So it's not a plane, it's not a bug or a bird, it's not a satellite. It goes the entire horizon in a blink of an eye, and you can see just the light go by, and it's not a shooting star, it's not a meteor. I've been into astronomy for most of my life, and I can tell you it's not those things. And one night I counted 3 of them in a row, and they just scoot by. And so and it's always clear here. That's the other thing. It's usually blue skies. So there's a lot of activity here. The first few weeks I was here, I was having intense dreams of ships in the sky and underground bases and being contacted, like all these weird I guess third person subject matter dreaming, like dreams that were not normal. And so I don't know how else to explain it without going off on a tangent and saying like, hey, I experienced this. I don't want to claim something that I can't prove. But I'm saying the first few weeks, the first month I was here, there were intensely unique dreams that were related to underground bases and spaceships. And so that was cool, to be honest. But there's a lot going on. And so there are the most haunted town in America is an hour away in Jerome, Arizona, and it's a haunted place. It was a mining town, and there's a lot of people doing the black magic and all that stuff there. It's a alternative spirituality place, Jerome, Arizona. It was a mine, so at the turn of the century, there were 15 or 30,000 people living there, and they had fires, and like 9,000 people died at once, something like that. Thousands died in massive fires where the town burned down. So it's the most haunted town in America. That if you look it up, there's a lot of info there, and it seems to be the polar opposite of Sedona. So where Sedona has the spirituality, this growth spirituality, you go to Jerome, and it's this haunted spirituality. So whatever. I don't want to go out. Yeah, exactly. They're almost like polar opposites of energy. That's in my opinion. I don't want to tick anybody off. If you live in Jerome, it's a beautiful city. I've been there. There's a great spot. It's actually stunningly beautiful. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but it seems like there's a lot of people that are into alternative lifestyle there. I'll leave it at that.
Well, now that you were talking about your trip to Egypt, I was living in Egypt around for 4 years. And in the beginning, I was living in front of the Grand Pyramid, then in front of the Sphinx, and in the last stage, in the desert of Luxor, ancient Thebes was set. And I was just in front of the Red Mountains, where the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens is, all this massive Stargate compound. And I definitely connect with the underground cities because they would come and visit me like at least once a week. They would do a very specific sound, and I knew that they were already calling me. And every time that I went to the desert, I would be taken to these places that nobody goes to. And even I had once I had a really huge encounter that after that visit to the desert, I went for 15 days, like mostly in my bed. I went through a huge process of restoring my circadian system, my reticular system. Everything went to full restoration, and then no needing to sleep, no needing to eat, and like a huge connection with all these beings, and also expanding my memory, among many other things. That's why I also related, because that's one of the things that you are teaching. So
thank you. That's amazing. I believe me, I'm heartbroken that I didn't go because I really wanted to do a lot of research. I have is it here? Oh, it's over there. I have a Muse, a brainwave scanner, and I was working with Dan Winter about having some experiments around. So chapter 3 in my book, Beyond Sight, is based on research I did for the learning company, and that they had psychoenergetic monuments that they were actually treating the water in Karnak.
Yes.
And that the obelisk technology was to change the water properties of the Nile so they could grow things, they could do psychoenergetic interaction. And I was going there with a brainwave scanner to do experiments and prove it. And so I'm really heartbroken about it. Probably the next year I want to go. I want to give a shout out to Abby Lynn. She's the one that puts together these Egypt tours. A bunch of friends of mine do it. Suzanne Spooner does them, and Abby Lynn is doing them. They're Egypt tours, and it's like a package, and you tour it. And I was really looking forward to that. So for that reason, but that's interesting, the monuments, and Egypt, it's very clear, is not, they didn't just haphazardly build those things. It was a very advanced technology behind it and consciousness technology. So I'm actually recreating it. I'm building obelisks. They're hoping to build a piezo product that will help with healing and therapy, the same exact stuff, and be able to treat water with piezo effects to generate. I'm building, I've got a 3-footer and another one that's a meter. One's 26 inches and I have a 10-inch base, and then the other one is a meter and it'll have a 12-inch base that it's under. And I'll have I'm using Dan Winter's technology. PiezoFire.com is his version of that, but I'm trying to build that into an obelisk, a resin obelisk that has the properties of a crystal, that is high dielectric and high piezo. And so to be able to broadcast that stuff and actually directionally change the field, and all I'm doing is copying existing technologies that I see at Karnak, at the Karnak Temple in Luxor. The Vatican has an obelisk there with an array around it. The Boboli Gardens in Florence, Italy has an obelisk with an array around it. The Washington Monument is an obelisk with an array around it. In Astana, Kazakhstan, the town has not an obelisk, but a pillar with an array around the same layout. So all these things I found in all these sites, and it looks like they're treating the water. And this is a technology they've had ever since then. So there's a layer of society that is aware of this technology.
Yes.
So I'm trying to recreate it. So chapter 3 of my book kind of gives all the deets on that. So anybody interested?
Yeah, yes. Like I saw that show that you have with Dan Winter. I had one with him also talking about plasma tech that I was mentioning earlier.
Oh, wow.
And because, underground, like for instance, Giza Plateau, and actually if we go into the Earth's, construction, like inner construction, there needs to be a plasma at a very specific level. So they knew, and they access to that plasma field underground, and then they would place a lot of their artifacts there to take from that plasma, and then expand it as well. I'm sorry, what?
They would charge them there.
Yes. And
wow.
There have been now some studies that saw that there were some plasma bubbles coming from a Giza Plateau, like they were present underground, and like making themselves kind of evident. And I have videos of myself, like after doing huge connections, with the beings underground, my body has this in between green and pink halo, which is plasma, because I'm tuning into that field. So yeah, I do believe like a lot of that is coming and out to the surface. That's why also the military forces in Sarwan, these pyramids in between Giza Plateau and Abu Sir and Sahara, they have been taken by the military forces because there is a huge vortex there of plasma, huge one.
I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, I was hoping to go and explore all that, it was definitely on my bucket list. Yeah, I'd like to go in the next year, but.
And if you don't, we did a Egypt tour a bit ago to like place of power to activate superpowers and give the place what they need. So we'll let you know as well when we're doing that, if you ever want to collaborate and see if you already did it or not. If not, whatever. And then other places too. We're going to Mexico, Tibet, Japan, Ireland, other things. So if you let us know what you're interested in, and we can collaborate. So we had a question in the chat just before it like goes to get the audience more involved. Yes, ask your questions and we'll bring them up. Bella, which one is your favorite mountain? And I suppose in the Sedona area.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So I don't know the name of. There's one that's actually shaped like a dodeca. It's west of Cathedral Rock, and I have a drone. I do drone shots out here, and there's one that's actually shaped like a fractal dodeca. The whole thing. They call it. It has a name. pyramid or something. But that one in Bell Rock, I love Bell Rock. I'm going to hike that one next. And everybody loves Thunder Mountain. Rion lives right in front of Thunder Mountain, and that's a neat place. But I kind of feel drawn to Bell Rock myself. And then I want to explore the other one that's shaped like a dodeca because I'm looking for nodal points, fractal nodal points for remote viewing. So something I'm working on. And I'm intending on putting out some social media content on that in the near future. I'll make reels and things to show how these nodal points are relevant to everybody. So
yeah, I noticed in your book you're going into various places of power. I guess a lot of questions, so I'll stack them one at a time. So you're giving a presentation at the Rise of the Guardians conference. Do you already know what it's going to be about? What's the subject matter, so people can get excited to go to that?
So my background in the secret space program background is something I always have to mention. I can't, even though I really feel like I've done it so many times that nowadays I have plenty of information of what I've learned on finding evidence about so I've always searched for evidence to prove what I remember, and I'm blessed to have any. So many people don't have any. It's a shame because many people are involved. Very few can find places they were taken away straight in space. Anyhow, so I always have to incorporate that into my presentation. It's basically secret space program that humans are already in space. We're already up there. We already have colonies in space, and they interact with us, and we're taken and put back in a blink of an eye. So that I always have to present on that. And usually I've got it down. It used to be an hour for me to get through all that, but now I've got it down to like 20 minutes. And then the rest of the time I'll be presenting on the science that I'm working on. So the other thing, I've worked with Rion and with Dan Winter recently. And the Dan Winter thing is I'm trying to translate his science. It's very difficult to understand. Dan, sometimes he uses exact scientific jargon. It's so fast, it's hard to understand what he means. So we're making a media series that explains it little by little, bite-sized pieces, so everybody can understand what he's talking about. And I had to work with him for a long time before I understood it. And when I did, I started looking at the things that I was working on. I'm doing audio right now based on his science. I'm doing binaurals and bilaterals and isotronic recordings. And they're amazing, and they're based on his harmonics that are tuned to the Planck distance, and they're absolutely amazing. And so I'll be presenting on that stuff, the obelisk recreation, that technology, and the binaurals and that technology that I'm working on. They'll be coming out in 2025, early 25. In the next month or so, I'm going to have all the audio. I'm going to have a store with all the audio products out. And they're amazing. I'm using them myself. It's a big difference. I use a healing one, a health one. It's just a recording, but it's tuned to that frequency that goes to the Planck by increments of the golden ratio. And there's a huge result. It's a next level of binaurals. And I overlay it with a bilateral recording so that you don't even need headphones. You can just listen to it and it still has the effect.
Wow.
So
is that going to be on your site?
Yes. So I already have a couple of them. I have a healing one and I have a remote viewing one for sale on my Patreon, in the shop on my Patreon. And those are early versions. I'm going to add music and subliminals. I'm going to tell people straight up, like, there's subliminal recordings in here that are affirmations. Bam. They don't work as well when you know about them, but also I'd like to sleep at night by not lying to people. And but I'm going to make them for manifestation, for setting goals, for motivation, quit smoking, weight loss, you name it, meditation, remote viewing, remote influencing. I'm going to make these recordings, 30-minute recordings you can listen to, and they're binaurals, but they're tuned to the Planck distance, so that your brain waves are actually automatically accessing the array.
Yeah.
And then with a layer of bilaterals and other isotronics and a few other goodies. And the ones I've made so far are just super powerful. The remote viewing groups that I have, when the people get out of the alpha group towards the end of that, I let them get the binaural, the remote viewing one. And I've had nothing but good responses from that. So people that listen to the binaural for a 30-minute and then do a remote viewing session really, really have an easier time accessing the data and making sense of it.
That's very exciting. I myself work with a lot of frequencies because one of the things throughout my time there, in research in Egypt is like a lot is, like how the brain can be influenced by very specific waves. So I have been translating formulas, for instance, of Nassim Haramein, like the vacuum, and also the moment of the synapses in between the microtubules in the neurons, and then using my voice. And also I have been having, because I was trained throughout that time, to use my voice, even, like doing like kind of sounds of artifacts, because people even ask me, is that your voice? And I say, yeah, but I'm, like connecting with the field of very specific artifact and then transmitting it. And then, yeah, it definitely has amazing results. So looking forward to listen to yours.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and I'd be curious to see what kind of frequencies you end up recording it, like what it really is, the frequencies that you're recreating of the artifacts. So you can tune other things, you can tune everything. Just our conversation we're having here, you can change the frequency of it to that carrier, and it has a different effect. That falls on the ears differently.
Yeah, I will send one to you, or many.
Thank you. The other thing is, Suzanne Spooner, the QHHT hypnotist.
No, I don't know her.
She trained directly under Dolores Cannon. She's recorded voice work with me. So I had her do a couple 20-minute recordings in her voice. So she's a very high caliber hypnotist. So her voice control is just amazing, and the way she speaks, much better than me doing the audio. So I had her do recordings, and I'm cutting they're all affirmations that I had, like a script, and I'm cutting those up so then I can mix and match, and it'll be her voice in a lot of the recordings and even in the sublimbs, and then my voice too, for a male voice, because people respond differently. So it's a big mix. There's a lot to do in these that goes into these products, but they're just so effective. Everybody, the binaural stuff, just listening to binaurals on YouTube, but you don't know what you're getting. A lot of these guys don't even make them. They're having a third party, a company in China, create their audio for them, and you have no idea what's in them. You have no idea what's in them. So anybody that knows me, has met me personally, I'm pretty much an open book. And short of telling everybody what's in the sublimbs, which I figured out a way to do that in a good moral way, is basically I'll share the script with somebody else and they'll vouch and say, look, there's nothing bad in here. And that way, you're getting a clean recording that's doing the job that you wanted, not telling you to vote for somebody or to buy other products, not some other subliminal, post-hypnotic suggestion stuff. It's not any of that. I want to do it as morally as possible. But the thing is, they're just so powerful. They're just so powerful. People that are upset, you're going through depression, this can literally fix it. And you can motivate yourself. It's hard to stay. The most important aspect of success is, consistency, being determined, have a grit. And people that don't have that, you can play one of these recordings every day, a motivational one that's tuned to the brain waves of when you're in a motivational state. So when you're motivated, it's tuned to those brain waves. So you will go back to that state of mind when you listen to it. And, it can keep you consistent. And that's the key to success. And so these are super powerful. I'm stoked about it. I don't think I'm going to make $1 million doing it, but I'm going to put these out and I think they'll be available. I think a lot of people are going to like them. So that's interesting. I'm happy to hear any of your stuff too.
Yes. I also use codes, because I work a lot with holofractographic tech. So then I use codes and in motion. So now that you were mentioning the mountain, the Cahidron mountain, I can imagine how powerful that is, I'm sorry, you were going to say.
So you mentioned your remote viewing group. Is that with the Farsight Institute? And have you noticed different types of frequencies that interact to amplify vision, the opening of the pineal and ability to see more HD bright or make it easier to remote view. And tell us more about the group and what if people are interested in that, how they can find them.
Absolutely. So right now, I think I'm up to 4 groups worth of people that are doing remote viewing. So 2 beginner groups, one on Saturday nights and one on Sundays, and then an intermediate group. And then there's an advanced group that's a professional group for hire. And I'm going to start another advanced group after the first of the year. They're all run on my Patreon. So you can go to TonyRodrigues.com and there's a link to my Patreon there. The alpha group is to learn remote viewing from scratch. So if you've never done it before, the alpha group, and then we meet once a week. I give 2 targets a week for people to do in their own time. And then on Sundays during the meetings, we go over the results and we give instruction. It's a mix. Some of the far sight techniques are in there. Some of other techniques are in there. CRV, God, they got so many acronyms. But it's all based off what I remember being in an InyoKern and the documentation I found when I was researching for my book for Beyond Sight. I went to InyoKern and I had memory of what was going on there. I went to the same building. It was exactly how I remembered. It was freaky. It was a life event for me to go back to the place where I woke up in a 20 and back. I stood in the same spot, and that's the book. And so that I went back and I researched it where I went there, and I had enough info to put that book together and make sense of it. With that, when I uncovered about all of the program that I was in from April of 82 till December of 82 was the same time that the programs of remote viewing changed. From April of 82 to January of 83, right there was Grill Flame to Center Lane, Project Center Lane. And that was remote viewing research. It was advanced. And the things that I remember kind of fill in the blanks when you go and get a CIA document from the Freedom of Information Act, the CIA declassified library.gov, you get a document, it's blacked out. Well, there were some documents that I found that the blacked out part was what I remembered. So, and I was able to fill in the blanks and kind of connect the dots on a lot of it. And so that's when I went into remote viewing, and it was a success. It's a success. I think at this point we're getting blocked a lot. I was the first person publicly to introduce remote viewing countermeasures, the blocking. And I think that, and I talked about it public. I've been open about it all. It's in my book. I presented on it. I think I presented in South Dakota about it. I presented before that at YssaH. I presented on how to do blocking because, like I said, I'm just an open book. It's wrong to pocket this stuff, and people have the wrong idea about remote viewing. Believe me, there's a lot of false remote viewing out there. People that think they're getting a remote viewing, they're not. They're being lied to. So there's a lot of false prophets in that regard. There are people that say it's remote viewing. It's not. It's clairvoyance. I'm not saying that they're not psychic, and I'm not calling people liars, but it sure looks that way. Remote viewing is a blind experiment. You have no idea what the target is when you're doing the viewing. That's one of the primary requirements. The viewer has no idea what the target is. And so anyhow, I put that stuff together, and the groups have been a success. People come and go. It takes a couple months to learn it. Some people have been there from day one. Some people come in a couple months, they get results, and they turn around and go. It's a revolving door. It's Patreon, and but it's a blast. We have a great time. Everybody, when we do the target reveal, sees how close or how far they got from it, and I'm looking at ways to gamify it, make a game of it for a lot of fun. I think that over time, when you get good at remote viewing, I certainly have noticed that I am a lot more in touch with my own intuition. So I can say, you know what I mean? I just can stop for a minute and center myself as if I'm remote viewing, and kind of get in touch with my intuitive self, which I never did before. And it's made a big difference. It's made a big difference to me. I think it makes a difference to people in the class. After a couple of months of doing it every week, you kind of understand what your intuitive voice sounds like. So a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. Do you think that all like the blockages that you mentioned, that are put, like in every scale, like regarding to also to memory and to like all the skills, the psionics that we can develop or activate within, like are commonly targeted. So do you think that living in a network, in a strong network like you are now in Sedona, uh, decreases the attacks, like making the network stronger, with the ones around you? So creating and building up a huge field that is more difficult for other things to target you. And that perhaps that's why what we are being called as a humanity, like to create all these networks, these solid networks, where all the different aspects of the artificial matrix that is trying to come through our field is weaker.
There's a lot of versions of psychic attack and a lot of versions of psychic defense. And in remote viewing, it's not exactly so. Most of remote viewing is being an observer. And so when you're accessing outside of time space, everything is available to everybody. So there's no distance, there's no time. It's all just there, and you're observing it. So most of remote viewing is safe in that regard. There are ways to protect yourself. There are things we do. The primary thing is we don't target dangerous things. We don't target violence. We don't target things that when you look at Farsight, really the standard in remote viewing, public remote viewing, you look at some of the other guys, future forecasters, Dick Allgaier, who I have a great deal of respect for. He's an amazing remote viewer, and everybody at Farsight. They remote view aggressive targets. They remote view targets that have defense, or they remote view things that are like a big energetic moment. I purposely avoid them, and that's one of the methods of defense. It's the easiest one for new people. So I would never have a new remote viewer go back and look at the Kennedy assassination, for instance. So why bother? So it's about learning how to remote view. It's not about the target. It's about the method. For one, there are states of mind. It turns out there's a lot of things that you can do in the meditative level of remote viewing. So remote viewing requires meditation, period. People that meditate all the time pick up remote viewing faster than people that don't. In the meditative state, there are defenses that you can do that help. So it's a state of mind. And as there are things to learn from Rion, who's really adept at that stuff here. And there are many ways, methods of protection that you can do. Mostly it's just keeping your field and your own state of mind, realizing that your own input and your output of energy are applicable. And so I don't like to be doom and gloom and even give credence to a lot of the people that are out there casting spells on people. But as far as remote viewing goes, no, there are ways to go about it. You don't bring home a demon with you or some kind of entity. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
Imagine if you stand on a mountain and you look down into the city and you can only see it vaguely. There's a city there. If you have binoculars, you're not getting poisoned by using binoculars. Remote viewing is a lot like those, along those ways. You're just an observer.
Okay, because there was someone in the chat asking actually that, and but when you said about blockages, like blocks in all these capabilities, do you think that at some point those blocks like can be decreased? For instance, I see the monks in Tibet, like they have all this awareness of all these capabilities that even like projecting their consciousness while meditating, getting their heart to an epsilon and brainwave to an epsilon state, and then they just transfer their consciousness and come back, which is kind of what I feel when I was listening to your story, like the technology that they use to like to pull you from this reality to another reality, just collapse the time for like, because you were also mentioning that you could only be around 20 years in series, so I related this like to collapsing, like it's a bubble of time and it can only be active for a very specific for very specific cycles. So as soon as those cycles or that bubble, like finishes its lapse, then it like it dissolves, to say it somehow, and then you come back to your consciousness. That's why they cannot you cannot stay longer than 20 years. That's what I was perceiving. But in relation to that transfer of consciousness, for instance, it's for me the same technology, same, like very similar. Like when we are connecting with one of our fractals that are in another dimension, and we bring it. Of course, the time dilation in Earth is quite different. So we normally just tune a little bit with that fractal of us. We feel it within our body, it's in full integration, and then it goes. So because for them, being here in Earth represents a much bigger amount due to the magnetic density field in Earth. So yeah, like what the monks do is transfer as well their consciousness, as how I see it, project themselves and safely come back, and I was just wondering, as the monks do all these hives, well, just hives is a very specific, peculiar word that can bring many connotations. So, they build this structure, this safe structure where the monastery is, and you can see that they don't. Apparently, it's safer for them. They don't have many blocks coming into their field. Do you feel that, for instance, what you're building in Sedona is also easier, building up that network for many blocks to be derived to your field and to the field of everyone else?
I'm not sure. Tell you the truth, I'm not sure. That you gave me a lot there. That was a neat question. When you talk about the 20 and back, the 20-year increment, to be honest, I don't have a definite yes or no on that. Like, I experienced it and what I was told, but they never briefed me and really gave me a lot of insight of what was going on. I was told that if it was more than 20 years, they could have you more than 20 years, but it would risk permanent damage. So permanent mental damage.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know, in regards to what you were saying, the other thing is, I don't feel it was a bubble of reality. I feel like at that time in 1985 or 86, when I was in Seattle, I felt that there were two of me. We were experiencing life. So I believe it was through cloning. I don't think it was another, like an alternate timeline or something. I think that people are among us that are in a 20 and back, that are somewhere else and can go back to it. I really do. It's hard to get your head around it. When you're talking about time travel and going back and forth, it's really hard to get your head around it. And so that's what I feel, though. But you know what? I'm not an authority on it. I experienced it, but I didn't participate in it on a way. Like, it happened to me. So the same way the surgery happens, I don't know what happened during the surgery. So I can't take a definite yes or no on that.
Yeah, just to mention, when I said bubble of reality, it was not like an alter reality. It's like, for instance, when I go to Egypt and do some configuration, I know that I have a very specific time frame to do a thing. And after that, reality comes back and it's time for me to come back. It's something like that.
Interesting. So that's like a projection, like a consciousness projection. So remote viewing works kind of like that. There is remote influencing. So when you really talk about people that are adept in it, we're really talking about the same phenomenon, the same science around it.
Yes, exactly.
So like I said, whereas remote viewing is getting into a brainwave state, a state of mind to where you can access the data and you kind of flesh out little bits of data at a time of ESP that everybody can do. That's the first steps of what people that do remote viewing thousands of times, 100,000 times, they're always in that state of mind. They can get to that state of mind quickly. It's like remembering a song. Like, you can meditate all day to get into a brainwave state, like you said, the epsilon state, which I'm not super familiar with, because it's theta that we're after. We're after the theta state for remote viewing and alpha, between those two brain states. So, but once you do it so often, it's like remembering a song. All you have to do is remember the state of mind and you get to it. So the people that are very adept that do remote viewing all the time can immediately meditate and get to that brainwave state faster than somebody that's brand new, a beginner at it. That's why I say people that meditate often pick up remote viewing faster. But once you can get into that state of mind, and some people just naturally have the physiology to do it, that's who we're seeing, the people that can bend spoons and the telepathy and the psychic ability. All that stuff is basically the same state of mind or brain waves that can collapse to the Planck distance, that can charge collapse to the Planck and access outside of time space. And time space has what? Gravity, time, even perception, distance. So all the things that are a problem for these abilities, once you can access out of it, are not a problem anymore. So people can move things, they can bend things, they can see in the future and in the past. And when you gang a lot of people up, they can manipulate the future and the past. So it seems like that's been going on for a long time.
Nice. And I want to really hammer it home for people, because I'm also sensing there's you understand targeting, I understand targeting, and the limits the dark side puts on this expansion and awakening into this field and understanding of psionics and vision. I sense a frequency coming from Washington D.C. that's trying to suppress this knowledge, and it's going for people like you to try to stop people from transcending their limitation in sight. So I'd like to hammer home, and somebody asking the question, Kate Rose, if we would like to join, how would we do so? So that's one point. And then I'd like you to go into full detail on how people can sign up and what are you offering in your fields of classes and stuff. And
thank you.
What is so that people understand that you're an authority in it, what's your history in it, and your successes and victories?
Wow, great. Wow, thanks, Sean. You're teeing me up. So you on my website, TonyRodrigues.com, you can link to my Patreon, or you can go to Patreon and it's Talks with Tony, all one word, Patreon/Talks with Tony. Or you can get there through my website, TonyRodrigues.com. It's join the community tab or one of those. And you go to the Patreon and sign up for the Alpha group. That's the beginning to remote viewing. And then after that, you can graduate. If you complete that, it's a 9-week course. You graduate to the Quantum group and then to the Galaxy group, which hasn't started yet. But it's through the Patreon. And what happens is it's $50 a month. And it's 4 meetings. They're about 90 minutes to 2 hours each on Sundays. But we put out 2 targets a week. So you always got the targeting practice. And that's really what does it. So I'm working on a video course that I'm going to sell separately for people that are just antisocial, that don't want to part, and have another product out there. It doesn't hurt. I can make a video. I say this all the time. I can make a video that shows you how to properly lift weights. That shows you your body length, your body height, your build, which weights you should do, the optimum. I can show you how to bench press, how to do the pull, how to do the curl, all those. I can make a video that tells you the absolute best way to do that. And you can watch that video and learn a lot, but you won't get any stronger. You'll be no good. You'll be in no better shape by watching that video. Watching a video on remote viewing is the exact same way. You have to do viewings. You have to remote view. You have to go into the state of mind and do that action, that seesaw action of thinking about something and then thinking about nothing and being able to meditate and probe the data. You need to do the remote viewing. You got to do the work the same way that you have to get in the gym and lift the weight or walk on the treadmill or whatever it is to make a change in your current state of being. And so that's what I'm offering. That's what that service is. It's not a remote viewing course that's 2 weeks and you're out. It's not like all the others where you do that. It's an ongoing course. And by the end of the year, it's way cheaper than taking any of the other courses because they're all like $2,000. And I give you 2 targets a week, every week. So you can do the targets and then we meet and we do the reveal. So you can see how good you did. And then we offer and we say, here's where you did good and here's where you can improve. And so it's a very effective. People are remote viewing for one, and then after a while, after so long, I make you target. I make everybody learn how to target as well. Targeting is something they don't like to teach you, because that's where the power is. And like I said, targeting and the countermeasures. I honestly think that people are out there doing countermeasures against the group now, but there are ways around that as well. But countermeasures exist, and targeting is very powerful. There are many different ways you can target, and lots of different information you can glean from a simple target that has nothing to do with the target. So these are all things I teach through that. But the idea is that it's an aerobics class, that every week you're doing remote viewing. Every single week you're remote viewing. And at the end of a year, you're up at 100 targets, over 100 targets, and it's puts you at the expert level.
Nice.
Was that the whole question?
The last part would be so to explain to people, to give them the whole, why should I take remote viewing from you, like your history, so that people
the history. So
victories.
Wow, man, thanks, dude. Man, I love you, Sean. So I was in, that's what I was in. So in Ceres Colony Cavalier. So in 2015, when I got my memories back, I only remembered the MK Ultra side of it, where I was taken to Inyo Kern, and then they were doing experiments on us, and we were trauma-based mind control. So I remembered that in graphic detail, and that's in my book. But when I physically went there in 2023 with Tyler from Journey to the Truth, we drove there to Inyo Kern. He filmed it. And I didn't expect to find the exact building that I woke up in, where I took these. And when I went there, it was visceral. I mean, I could smell the place. It was the same. The planes taking off, the time of day, Ridgecrest, California. I went back to a place in a 20 bag that I remembered and physically felt it, physically was there. It was, and I described it before I got there. So it's in interviews years ago. For years, I've described the place, and then we got there, and I took a witness with me who filmed a documentary. And so that was all in the spirit of proof for this, and which is bigger. It's not about, you know what I mean? Like, it's not making me, we're trying to prove that this happens, and it's been happening, and is continuing to happen to people, that this technology exists, that life extension exists, that ETs are out there, all of it. After that happened, I continued to remember. Now, instead of remembering the painful parts of Inyo Kern, I remembered the conversations, because I'd been there, and I remembered the times that were not painful, right? So you remember the emotional, long-term memory, you remember the emotional spikes, you remember the big spikes, the big events. You don't remember the, scrubbing the floor. You don't remember that stuff, the mundane stuff, mowing the lawn. You don't remember that. You remember the birthday party, you know what I mean? And so after going there, I started to remember that, we were doing remote viewing, and I was already doing it on my Patreon. We were already doing remote influencing, because I'd always remembered that from day one, the advanced stuff. That's why my background is purple. So I'm working on a ton of products about it. So I went back and started researching remote viewing, the program Project Grill Flame, which a lot of the professional remote viewers nowadays have no idea about remote viewing, about Project Grill Flame. You know that? Like Aziz, my buddy from Farsight, he's like, I never knew about Grill Flame, man. And believe me, the paperwork is there. I've got upwards of 1,000 pages of declassified CIA documents around Grill Flame. And combing through that, I went, oh, geez, here it is. It's all that, and my memories that I had gave me a unique perspective, and I reassembled it, how to remote view, and kind of boiled it down into a different way. It's free knowledge. It's free. You can learn how to remote view. So Farsight has videos on YouTube. There's Remote Viewing 101. Aziz Brown made a beautiful instructional video on how to remote view. It's the Farsight method. It's SRV. Courtney created scientific remote viewing, and Courtney is very advanced in his analytics. The analytics is king, and Courtney's very good at it. And so is Glenn Wheaton, and those guys over at Future Forecasters. They really have great analytics. So that's free. But you still don't have somebody targeting you. You don't have somebody encouraging you. You don't have somebody giving you advice as you need it on the individual basis. And that's what my program does. As far as victories, just being able to remote view, man, just pulling it off one time is a huge victory because you're not supposed to be able to do it. So for somebody to say, this is the target, and for me to sit and go through a session and describe accurately the target, I've done it a few times. I've done it a bunch of times. And we do it every single week. We beat the probability. So my analytics system is simple. I don't really worry about analytics because I'm worrying about teaching it to you. I don't care about the target. I really don't. I don't care. I don't want to know where Jimmy Hoffa is. I don't. I want the person in the group to access the data because that means you're listening to your intuitive voice. That means you're getting better. And so just proving that. So I have a scoring system. And if you reach a certain threshold, it's better than a 1 in 250,000 probability, right? So something crashed in my house. Better than a 1 in 250,000 probability of the target. It's very rare that you can take a guess. If I held up something, a bag or an envelope here, Sean, and I said, guess what's in this envelope? What are the odds of you getting it right now? Not great. Pretty slim. So we are better than 1 in 250,000 odds, and we do it every week, every single time, every time, every single week. Somebody gets a 15, every single time, and so that's the victory. You know what I mean? Like that's because what are the odds of that? What I'm doing is proves ESP, it proves extrasensory perception. It proves that it's transferable, that everybody can do it. You don't got to be some people are born naturally with the ability. I say it like everybody can play basketball. Not everybody can play in the NBA, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody can play basketball.
Yeah.
Everybody, even kids in wheelchairs are playing basketball. Some people are ready for the NBA though. Some people are 7 feet tall. And in the ESP realm, it's the same way. Some people are very gifted naturally. Our gifts are our curses in other ways. And so, but it proves that it's right, and we do it so constantly. And to see the look on somebody's face when they don't believe, everybody always says the same thing every week. When they turn in the results, they go, "I don't think this is it. This is what I got. Here's my results. Here's what I got, but I don't think it is." They're not confident in it. And then I do the reveal, and they go, "Oh God, that's it," and they hit the target, and that look on their face, that awe that we're all happy for them is the big reward. That's the big pay. That's what makes it so much fun. So that's, and then I've used it to do some sport. We've checked out sports games to see, pick a football game just to see if you could do it. I'm working on doing it on betting money. Like we're looking at ways to make money with it, but in a moral way. Like there's immoral ways that you can use it. Obviously, the government does. And it translates to ultimately you're going to go into remote influencing or psychoenergetics, where they're changing the way the targeting works. But we do it in a moral way and just kind of looking at it for the fun of it and learning, how far it can go. And that's what it's also kind of fun to do the countermeasures. I ain't gonna lie. The countermeasure experiments are also fun because you break off into teams and do it. So I guess that's it, man. I guess as far as personal wins.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that inspires me, and I want to work more with you and Farsight and like Yemi and others that go into this to decoding the full capability pathway and accessing to this to its fullest, and release the blocks. And you went into countermeasures, which is beautiful because I barely ever hear anyone talking about them. I am constantly tuning into and writing like journals on all the things that are projected at us to block our psychic abilities, to turn our bodies into like paperweights instead of psionically emergent species. And I'd like to work with you on categorizing these, the types of energy used, where it tracks back to, and we can make a system for people to remote view, psychic track, find where the energy that's limiting their ability to remote view and other abilities, and stop it. And then the heaviness and the weight comes off, and the psychic eyelid opens up safely. And I think we can release those limits on remote viewing and then make a system for that, as well as the esoteric anatomy and the rare energies emitted to empower the third eye. If you'd like to do that together.
Sure. Well, I'm always a student of it. So, Aziz Brown said it, like, I interviewed him to like a promo for my conference I did in October. And he said, look, everybody says we scratched the tip of the iceberg on remote viewing. We haven't scratched the tip of the iceberg. He's like, we haven't scratched the tip of the molecule on the top of the iceberg of remote viewing, is how much there is to learn still with it. So there's a lot to do with remote viewing that's still available. And it's not just remote viewing. Remote viewing is more like a tool for the bigger science of consciousness, of ESP, and the way we interact with the world. When we look at things, we change them in the quantum realm. So our consciousness is completely left out of Western science. The factor of consciousness is left out of it. So consciousness is an equal part of our reality as matter and time and energy. Consciousness is just as prevalent as matter, time, and energy. There's also consciousness. And so they factor into all those things. So when you're talking about experimenting on anything, you have to have it all in perspective, that they're all kind of married as one. And that's the reality we live in. So there's a lot of experiments. There's a few things I have drawn up, but I'm really just excited to get people in the basics from zero to remote viewing and getting a clear understanding that they can do it. Most people want to do it. They don't believe they can do it. And when they start doing it, they can't believe they did it. And so to get people to that's a real barrier, even after they're successfully remote view, to say, wow, I can't believe I did that. And so there's a barrier there to be confident and saying, okay, now I'm going to remote view. This is what I'm doing. That's a level of ability. And to get people to that level is a big deal. So that's what I've been doing. That's what's been the bulk of the last 6 months of work, probably. But there's some, we are doing some psychoenergetic experiments. We've been doing it a long time in tier 3 to help people out, to do things to help people. It works. So when you get a bunch of people together on one target at the same time and use these techniques, you can get big results. You can do things. That's in the tier 2 section.
Yeah, this is what I was referring about unity, like the fact when we come together for different things, I do believe that we make a change, like we really are making a big impact, that if we are just solo based, one here, one there, one there, one there, then the space in between those interferential waves trying to mess, with what we are creating is a wider range for them to pop up into our field. However, when we are united in networks, then, there is less space for them to actually, go in, and I do believe that is like, beyond the lines of what you were saying of Sedona, and building up there, a community. That's what I could perceive, like within the frequency of your words, the importance of building up a network, and then becoming stronger in many ways. Tony, when you're talking about remote viewing and accessing, to the quantum and so forth, how I see it is that we're navigating through the space-time fabric or the space memory network, and then accessing to very specific coordinates, which we get to unfold and then turn into that universe, the intersection in between like the X and the Y, how the holographic field is built,
Mhm.
So when we want to connect with a specific event, then we access to that coordinate and open that field of information, and that also can happen within our brain. Now that you were talking also about memory, because in the end, everything is fractal, and even in our DNA, we're capable to access it at a genetic scale, because, like how I see it, every time that we're shifting timelines, or, weakening some of them and strengthening others, we are doing it from our DNA, because everything is already established there. It's connected. So
Even smaller than DNA. So we're
yeah,
actually very big.
yeah,
DNA, we think DNA is a tiny thing. It's actually a very big structure in
yes,
comparison to the size of the universe, where
yes,
we're at. We're very
yes.
big. We're very big things. And you're right. You can access it's a fractal. It's a fractal array of electrons that operate at different voltages that keep them in the same 3D fractal structure. So that's kind of the science, some of the scientific jargon behind it. But it seems to have held up in all the research and in people that I've talked to. It's held up, and there's a lot once you get your head around it, once you understand how that works. There's a lot that you can do, and without energy, time, and matter, using consciousness to perturb the rest of those. It seems to be very, very simple to do overall. I don't know how I want to connect that, but I just want to say that after what I went through and getting my memories back and then talking about it, with this like as a far out story, right? But that kind of started the dominoes of me meeting people that were out of the ordinary. And that's what we are. That's what this is. Your show is, the audience. There seem to be specified groups of people that understand things that are out of the ordinary. And without the internet, without that happening, you couldn't, like you said, the communities and the way people like before the internet we would have never known each other. We would have never learned off of each other the things that we do. Like Sean, I've learned a lot from you, and we would have never learned. So we would have never bumped into each other. And so the internet and these little communities that are started, I think we're in the first generation of it, where these communities will grow and information proliferates, because we also weren't aware of how bad they were hiding it from us. You know what I'm saying? Without the internet to tell you all the kind of conspiracy rabbit holes, and you can go down and glean your truth out of this one or that one. But we would have never known, 20, 30 years ago, we would have never known all the stuff that we know now. So good stuff.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing, because the presence of your heart is felt through your words. And I do believe that that's a key point, actually, to plant many seeds, because there is many people that is just doing it because they can. And in your words is perceived differently. So thank you.
Thanks.
And I think we can. What I found recently from working together with multiple people towards an intention with an ability, and releasing blocks in a system like a psionic ability, is that you can all work together, trade commerce back and forth with the higher selves, and make a big push back on everything that's holding us back. And this world is full of limits and blocks and like these cocoons waiting for the butterfly to break out of, but they're also making the butterfly strong enough to break while they're breaking out of them. So there's all these multiple layers of sonic cocoons as we're emerging. And we have to unite together if we want to make it go faster, to where we create a future for the planet where it's easy, it's safe. The pineal gland feels safe to open up, the energy as well to generate, to where remote viewing is natural, and it naturally grows as we grow, and it's more effortless. And that takes the collective to push back against the forces that want to suppress it. And then because evil steals abilities, they didn't earn it, they stole it from some point of authority, and that can be resolved, healed, and restored. And a collective consciousness of authorities for the abilities can be restored, and then they can caretake the growing young ones as we amplify into it. I did this with telekinesis on one of my previous shows I just did, and my telekinesis amplified way better right after I did that. So I think that we can collaborate and form amplified groups and bring them to the awareness of what it needs to push this back and then restore the authorities so that it maintains into the future. And then we get rid of these countermeasures on remote viewing and let everyone know how they work and then how to make it so that they access it easier.
So the countermeasures don't work in a way that you're blocking somebody's ability. So the countermeasures work by hiding the target under new targets. So there's a different way about it. So you're not stunting anybody's ability at all in a countermeasure scenario. So it's very important to know that the military was on this in the 80s, in the early 80s. They were doing countermeasures. They were doing countermeasures to out of body. So think about a soldier that uses the Monroe Institute and then many other things like drugs and other electromagnetic means, peripherals, to go out of body and spy and actually perturb targets, like interfere with targets. They were going out of body. They were researching countermeasures to people that were out of body. So a ghost in your house kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like literally a ghost in your house. And they were like, well, we don't need China or Russia to send ghosts into the White House and spy on what's going on. So they were doing countermeasures to that. And that's kind of the basis of the work. What we're talking about remote viewing is just basic countermeasures to that regard. But it's pretty advanced. And so when you look at like Cheyenne Mountain or Area 51 or the backside of the moon, there are full-time teams of soldiers round the clock that are blocking that from remote viewing. So there are targets you look at and you go, man, everybody got this wrong stuff. You can project false targets. I inadvertently did a John Charles Moyen, if you're aware who he is,
Yes.
put out a video with me that he was here for the Odyssey conference and we remote viewed. We did a remote viewing. He wanted to make the target and it was an arc. And he put the remote viewing out, but inadvertently in that remote viewing session, we learned how to block the blocks. And so it was by accident that it happened. And so there are ways. It's a gaming. You know what I mean? It's just like an armor. Somebody shoots an arrow, so you make an armor that stops the arrow. So they make a bigger arrow. They use a crossbow, and then they use a different armor, and then they make a bullet, and then they make an armor. It's the same stuff. It's the same reality.
Now that you're saying block the block, it was reminding me of. Have you heard about the Isis knot, which is one of the Egyptian symbols as the key of life, the Ankh?
No.
Well, those are symbols that were like talismans, but they are just showing how to bend the energy. How we can bend the energy, and I use that knot to unknot energetic things that have been anchored in our holographic vessel.
Wow.
And it has given amazing results. And also, when we tune from these coordinates of this matrix, there are specific coordinates as if you're sending someone to a specific place or event, like setting the coordinates. When we go beyond the coordinates,
it went out.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of coordinates.
Hopefully
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're waiting for. Oh, he's back.
Okay. Speaking of coordinates,
I was up here clicking through the stuff. I turned the chat off because I don't pay attention to it. But I was clicking this other button. I accidentally hit the login and it threw me out. Sorry about that, guys.
No, it's okay.
No butterfingers.
So, well, I was saying about coordinates, like different coordinates. When we go beyond the coordinates of the linear time, the algorithms that they have used to set this control system, we tune into the algorithms and coordinates of the universal time, like the ones that the Mayan encoded in all those keyboards and so forth. And when you draw those coordinates into the space memory network, then you're going beyond the algorithm of the linear time. And the result is definitely different. I can tell you this because I have also experienced this. So somehow, I don't know, perhaps when all these blocks are done, like a way to make them also weaker is by anchoring ourselves to the universal time, which is different coordinates, in relation to this one. Just talking
I'm
about
thinking
space.
about it. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about that and pondering that. There's a lot to it, and because we're not taught any of the basics, we're not taught to think about any of this stuff. We're still on the ground floor of unpacking the physics and talking about ESP and our relationship to the universe, because modern science has totally blanked out. There's no consciousness, there's no conscious thought in any kind of science whatsoever that we're taught. So it's shut off from us so there's a lot that we're all learning because of the internet now. Uh-oh.
Mm.
You guys there?
Oh, yeah, you're
Yes,
freezing
you
up a
are.
little bit. Okay, it's
Yeah,
fine.
you guys froze
Let's
for me.
track back who's messing with you. DC still, they don't like you. Okay, we can stop them. But yes, like you're going into countermeasures. So thank you for clarifying. So you're talking about like camouflage, shielding, projection, screen visions, avoid, counter Aikido, and redirecting. So thank you, and I'll definitely want to take your classes into seeing
Yeah,
what
me
you've tuned
too.
into that. And I agree. Well, what I was interpreting before as including going right to the core of somebody's generating physical equipment. And I constantly find the reason, like the pineal gland and the inner vision, I've been able to experience it turned up high. And it's like, why can't I experience that all the time? Or why does that not do that? I found most of the issue is in this safety mechanism around the internal vision that's called the third eyelid. And it's a safety mechanism that makes a person shield up like the ego to protect them, in survival mechanism from things that they may not be ready to see, because a lot of things they would see can also see them back after they see them. And then it opens them up to more targeting and taking wounding and connectivity. So there's a mechanism that it requires it to feel more safe. And in that safety, it goes along with less attachment, less things connecting or projecting onto the person, negative programs, negative energy, or stealing from them and draining the third eye of power and light. And if there's more into countering that siege into the third eye, protection, offense, defense, fortressing, and whatever layer it's able to stop the incursion, the more safe it feels, it will naturally open up more. Like 1% is what people's third eye opens up when they dream, 3 to 4% when they're taking like mushrooms or something. And if they're even to a higher and higher level, such as 50%, they could be visually omniscient to the planet. And that comes with a lot of responsibilities and management role that needs to be built up for, or it can completely devastate a person to going insane or being broken apart if they're not ready. So yeah, just to add on to that. And thank you for, because beautiful to note the different programs that are shielding things from prying eyes, whether they're a negative program or a positive program, and then us being able to take that internally to do that ourselves, to protect ourselves from prying eyes, while also being able to do the infinite counter chess game back and forth and learn all of those.
Most of it's just state of mind. So you have to be mindful of where you're at now. I find myself even on days, you have a bad day, right? Something bad happens, and it's like you can get 1,000 compliments and one criticism hurts you for the week. You know what I mean? Like we're built that way. Humans, it's a screwy thing. 10,000 people love you, but one person doesn't like you, and that's the person that you know what I'm saying? That's the one thing that you dwell on. And so I found that just being able to police that is the biggest energetic fix. So policing that state of mind, like, okay, so that person doesn't like me, so what? These people like me. And on top of other things, being appreciative of where you are. Like everybody's got it pretty good, especially if you're tuning in on the internet. If you have time to sit around and watch a show on the internet, you're in good shape. You know what I mean? Like when you're starving with no roof over your head is when things are bad. And so there's always a state of mind to be thankful and to be appreciative and stay in that vibe. And people, energies and techniques that rob you of things energetically don't work if you can just vibe away from it. You know what I mean? Just maintain your own state of mind and vibe away from it. That's all it takes. It's really that simple. And well, yeah, I don't want to. That's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, controlling perception, clearing the mind, because that's the biggest thing into it. So that is drain or attachment or taking your attention away, so that you can program what your mind perceives.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to go ahead, and then we got a question from the chat.
Yeah, sure. You know, as you are kind of working and collaborating with Dan, you know, like in relation to all this physics and quantum physics, it's like generating that 0 point energy, you know, like going into that space, because like what I do is I call it is doing the vacuum, you know, like bringing all that energy that is, you know, like overwhelming you, you know, like embrace it, bring it back, and then connect with the consciousness of a black hole, you know, being that black hole, torsioning that energy, like bending your energy and then imploding it, doing that dimple. And yeah, so I just want to ask you about the memory. You know, like I'm quite interested in knowing, you know, like what do you have to say to people if they want to contact you to, you know, like to increase or, you know, like their memory, what you were saying, one of the things that you are now offering and facilitating.
Fragmented memory recovery.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when I had fragmented memories, people were asking me questions. I needed to remember things that I knew must have happened, and I just didn't have them. Like I said, it's easy to remember emotional highs and lows in your
Yes.
long-term memory. In the long term, the emotional things you remember. So a lot of people remember their birthday party. They don't remember that year, the first day of school that year. You know what I mean? So you remember your birthday, you remember graduating school. You don't remember going to school on your 12th grade the first year. And that's kind of a crappy analogy, but it's true. That's what I'm trying to say is you remember the big events. You don't remember mowing your lawn, little stuff. And so in the beginning, when I was doing my testimony online and interviews, people were asking me about the big stuff, you know, like tell me your story. And I remembered all that stuff clearly, but I couldn't remember the little things, brushing my teeth, what I ate with breakfast, lunch, dinner, you know, and these are things that must have happened and it really bothered me. So I dwelled on it a lot and I tried different things and I came up with exercise. And after a while I did some exercise. I was like, oh, now I remember it was a disposable toothbrush thing. We had to rip them and they had hardly any bristles. And it was just, now I remember it. And so one memory unpacks another. So you have to pry open. And you have a clear fragmented memory. You have to weasel and kind of pry more of it open and you'll get those other memories. The brain, if it's the brain, it probably is somewhere else, works like zipping, just like a file zip in computers. It zips the data, and as it's needed, it'll unpack it. And once you unpack it, you have that memory for a long time until it becomes a long-term memory again. The exercises that I developed with that are what are my memory course. And we were hosting it on Teachable, and they raised their prices. So we took it off of Teachable, and I haven't put it, it's going to be on Patreon next. So since I took it down, Jackie Kenner was hosting the Teachable, and she changed the account. Since she took it down, I mean, I keep getting emails. I've been getting like 2 a week. People emailing, hey man, the memory course, I can't get to it. So it's getting a revamp. Right now I'm building the audio products and the remote viewing course, and then I'm going to revisit the memory course and put that. It'll be on my Patreon, but it's going to be a few more months until that's out. But essentially, it's not it's not hypnosis. It's not some pill. It's an exercise. It's teaching. There's an exercise, a mental exercise that you do, and you keep track of your long-term memories, the things you do remember, and you just kind of pry them open over time. And so that's the course. And I just got sick of explaining it so many times that we made a video and listed it for sale, and it was a kind of a hit. It kind of did it. But it works. That's the other thing is I would always recommend to do exercises and try to get all the memories you can first before you go to a hypnosis or some kind of, or a remote viewer, somebody that's definitely not remote viewing. So it's very dangerous to ask somebody else to put your fate in somebody else's hands. So you should exhaust all your own personal needs first before you ask somebody else to do it for you. And memory and all of that stuff works the same way. It's very dangerous to let somebody hypnotize you. It's very dangerous to let somebody tell you what you experienced and you don't have memories for it. So I would always say that. I would say, there are great people out there. There's great hypnotists, there's great psychics, there's great all those people, healers and everything, but you should exhaust all of your resources first before you get hypnotized, before you go to those things. And so this is just an exercise to help do that. And that's I think that's what you're asking about.
Yeah. And now that you were saying with, like, where is that information coming from? How I see it is through the Planck units, the Planck plasma, that interconnects everything, boom, boom, as the psionics.
So we're giving away, right now, we're giving off charge. Ultimately, we're made out of charge. Everything is.
Mhm.
Everything is made out of charge, and we're giving off charge that collapses. And the ones that do it in a certain harmonic that arrive exactly at the Planck distance are gravity. That's why we're stuck together. That's gravity. The mental charges that we have access to that are on that brainwave that collapse access the psychic abilities. We can control the charge, what's going on. We have interaction. And that's what it is. So, and your memories are there. So your memories are stored out there too. So on the other side of the Planck is whatever you want to call it, people's subspace mind, the absolute infinity, the Akashic records, God, all of it. It's all just on the other side of the Planck, outside of time space. We are in a box that's albeit growing, supposedly. But outside of that, at the Planck distance, things that can arrive exactly at the Planck, that's where the magic is. So that's really what's going on.
Well, it starts to be decoherent, like what you express is that high coherent field. And after, that part that becomes start to be decoherent because it's also more separated. So there is more interference.
Well, they're everywhere. So the other thing is this. So here's the important, I've been saying this a lot, and I absolutely love pointing this out. So when you think about the size of the Planck, so most people think it's really small. So there are more Plancks in a cubic meter than there are cubic meters in the known universe.
Yes.
So the Planck is not only small, it's extremely small. Like you are the size of the known universe compared to the Planck distance. If the Planck was a cubic meter of size, you would be the size of the known universe. So all the galaxies and all the nebula, everything. So the known universe, the superclusters that we know about, we're closer to that distance than we are to the size of the Planck. So the distance between us and what's the smallest is massive. And so for energy to travel that far and up to us, to our conscious thought, we actually generate a great deal of energy. We actually are responsible for a lot of energy in our existence right now in the scale of the universe. Exactly. So that's amazing to think about. And every single molecule you have is accessing the Planck through gravity and charge collapse. So it's
like the mitochondria, like going cosmic scale, of how much energy. And I mean, I'm going already at an atomical level, but you were talking about Planck units. So yeah, like the fundamental units.
Yeah, the Planck is way smaller than that. Like it's ridiculous. Yes. Like a galaxy to a pin, to a drop, to a grain of sand on the beach to the size of a galaxy is even worse than that from a molecule to the Planck. Like it's a massive difference. We are very, very big. So that's neat. I love that you understand all that stuff. And The Russians were onto it back in the 50s. They were they were talking about the Planck distance, psychic consciousness involved with that. And then the United States got into the act in the 70s and 80s, and it's what's real. And so understanding that really can help you in everything you do. Really understand, the nature of the universe is important.
Yes,
Understanding the nature of the universe.
It definitely is. And that's what makes me very passionate. And thank you for bringing this up, because then we can actually understand how the psionics function, like connecting through the plasma network, Planck unit network, and well, that's how I do it. I don't know how everyone, but I like to do it from the Planck unit network,
I think everybody does it like that. They're just not aware of it. You're just aware, and I teach the science in the quantum group, the later group in the remote viewing. I teach the science of it, and the transverse waves versus longitudinal waves and how they interact.
Yes.
You can manipulate your surroundings to do a better remote viewing by being aware of the transverse waves versus the longitudinal waves and charge collapse. You can pick a better spot in your room to do a remote viewing. So the science is there.
Yeah, because the longitudinal would be more like quantum tunneling, like zoom, like even bringing it, like instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 5, zoom, you bring, like speaking about ripples in time, the same technology, which is just applied at different scales, how.
Well, once you can, so I'm worried that we're leaving the audience behind. But when you talk about accessing the larger fractal nodes for any of the psychic phenomenon, when you get on a fractal node, then you bypass the entire chain down, and you can instantly access the array at the Planck distance. So a nodal point. That's why we see the pyramids and the ancient megalithic sites are on nodal points on the Earth. They're on the nodal points because you can instantly access those quantum tunnels. Like you said, the quantum tunnel, you can instantly access it. And it's a much, so they were doing, God knows what they were doing in total. But the elites and the ancient people that had access to and still to this day, they're still very powerful points. But they're everywhere. They're everywhere for us to use.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm working on explaining it.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Like the pyramidal neurons within us, like they were also at some point interconnected to the pyramidal network. And actually, when you see how the pyramids unfold and reflect into for instance, the spinal fluid, creating that mirror effect as they did with the water, then they start that expansion process. And there are other neurons that generate the vacuum, which are the rose hip neurons. So it's awesome what we are doing in our brain. And yeah, I could go on, but as
no, it's good stuff. I mean, I can't wait till we hang out when you guys are in Sedona.
Yes, for sure.
We'll have to make sure to make time together and hang out. So
yes, definitely.
It's funny that there's enough to talk about without talking about my first book. When I talk about what I uncovered at the Inyukurn trip, that we haven't even talked about aliens.
Right.
That much.
Well, perhaps we can at some point to do another one, or
next time. Sure.
Yes.
So you talked about place of power and like different things in the house that can different places that can amplify your sonic abilities. I also found a lot of different like places, people, things, fruit, crystals, different types of geometry can amplify psychic abilities. And this is going to my passion for figuring out and eventually wanting to make a sonic amplifier for remote viewing helmet. And then also, I wanted to ask you, with your time on other places like series, have you come across like place of power on places like that as well as possibly ET ruins or anything like that?
There were places on Mars. There were ET ruins on Mars that were studied. So they were basically piles of rocks, nothing fancy like we see here, that we came across. that were obviously meant something to somebody long ago. They were there for, a million years or something. There were places like that. Ceres it was rumored that there were pyramids underground, that there were structures that some ETs built inside Ceres, but it was classified. So there were only rumors of it. But I think this is a level of technology that, for the most part, has been held away from us. The consciousness factors, and that was the big thing about the Germans. They say that the pre-World War II Germans considered consciousness in science.
Yes.
That was the difference between them now. And then all of a sudden, World War II happens, and there's no consciousness nowhere. Nothing. Not any animals aren't conscious. Like, the official study was that animals do not have a soul. They're not conscious. Animals. And so really that's like mainstream science. And so consciousness, they separated it from science. And this technology has been around a long time. And that's what understanding consciousness in a scientific method, in a scientific arena, is the next thing. That's what we're going to need post-disclosure. Post-disclosing, because we're going to come across ETs that behave and think in a different way than us. They have a different amount and a different method of consciousness, and so they interact with time-space differently. And this is one of the big missing technologies that they've hidden from us. Like, we talk about free energy. Everybody's hip to free energy and anti-gravity, but consciousness science, like you said, your helmet that would help you. There are many things. There are many, many ways to go about it. There are many peripherals that you can use to advance consciousness. Believe me, I'm working on some.
Awesome.
And there are things you can do. So this is a science. Once you get your head around it, like, you understand how thoughts collapse to the Planck, how you're accessing the array beyond the Planck distance outside of time space. That's really sums up consciousness. The other thing is that consciousness may be coming from the Planck up.
How I see it is like the 0 point energy is interacting with the space-time and boundaries and generates a feedback mechanism, and then that generates consciousness. The feedback in between the 0 point energy and the barriers of space-time.
Yeah, it's probably a one grand consciousness on the other side that is affecting us in ways that we don't realize. Probably. And the other thing is, we have blueprints to this. When you get back into the old texts, the old ancient religions, the old tales from ancient times, like, when you really look at it through the shades, you know what I mean, through the lens of consciousness technology, it all starts to make sense. It doesn't make sense to people, to the scientists, because they're completely unaware of how consciousness affects the universe. And thank God we have the double slit experiment to beat them over the head with. That is true.
Exactly.
Again, I feel like we might be leaving the audience.
Yeah.
I'm not even
It's okay.
Let me look at the chat.
They'll follow. We'll leave them a breadcrumb path. So yeah, there's many different ways to amplify consciousness, expansion, intelligence, remote viewing, other psychic psionic abilities such as materia, different frequency emission, sound, light, electricalization of different parts of the brain and simulation and empowerment, as well as different materia and conscious connection. Like, I will find as I go to different places of power, like we passed a really nice volcanic mountain on our way to another place of power, and it kept showing up to me in visions. I was like, oh, why is that? Oh, it's sending me vision energy to want to go through its school, and it wants to connect more. So there's like places that will empower you if you connect with them. Connection to like plants, as well, and chemicals, that goes back to the consciousness connection. If it likes you, it will connect. And also crystals in piezoelectric form, especially if they're amplified in vision technology. So there's all these different ways to amplify this, as well as I found that if you go to a place of power like in Egypt, every temple we went to, I just like close my eyes and like stimulate the pineal, with pressure and piezoelectric effect so that it spurs more light. And I'd get cool visions and see these giant like bird people and giant like dog people, and they would like start talking to me and beaming me with energy and doing all these cool things, and then teaching me a method with the school, and that goes deep. So we have a question in the chat, and you can comment on that too. But we want to show the chat some love. Is there any physical? So James Whittakis has like 2 questions on time with remote viewing. So is there any physical residue in the body form time travel missions? I'm not sure exactly how he means by that, but I think in like interaction with time, energy, or what you face with remote viewing back and forward in time.
It was related to remote viewing. That's when it, But then he asked that, it means he answered that.
Okay, and then what viewing up and down the time streams like?
I'm sorry, say that again. What's
viewing up and down the time stream like? I suppose is the question.
So he's talking about in regards to remote viewing the past or the future, not the present. I found that most remote viewings, unless specified in the targeting, remote view in real time. So when I say, let's say, for instance, if I say the Eiffel Tower, what's going on in the Eiffel Tower is the target. The remote viewer will, at the time, that's why I make them make note of when they're doing this session. They'll remote view it and say it's rainy. See this tall structure, and it's rainy, it's cold, and then you go. Then it's that they do that on a Tuesday, and then on Saturday or Sunday we go over the target, and I look at the time, and I look up. Oh wow, it was raining at the Eiffel Tower on Tuesday. So remote viewings tend to be in real time, at the time of. When you intentionally set the target into the past, it's almost as good as real time remote viewing, but it's just. You can also pick up on energetic moments in between now and then. In other words, if I'm remote viewing Times Square, what's going on in Times Square on July 15th, 1965? So you'll remote view that, but you can also pick up energetic things of New Year's Eve that day, that year in 1965, because there was 1 million people there in a huge energetic event. So you can have obstacles in looking into the past, depending on the nature of the target. So it's to be taken into account when you're looking at an energetic place or a non-energetic place. There are factors. So it becomes like looking into water. You know, when you put a stick in water, how it bends. The stick is still straight, but the water deflects it. Looking back in time does the same thing. There's a distortion. Looking into the future is a completely different animal, because let's look at the double slit experiment. Yes. So right now I have a wall over here. Right now the quantum particles in the wall are behaving a certain way. And when my consciousness looks at the wall, because of the double slit experiment proves it, I changed the way the quantum particles behave. If somebody's in the room, unbeknownst to you right now, if somebody was in your room right there standing, you couldn't see them, and they were looking at you, you would feel it. Yes. So this is also documented human experience. We all have this. There are people that have a video camera on them their whole life. They work, or their whole career, they work in an office. But when somebody's looking at it in real time, they go like they're being watched. So because our consciousness changes the quantum particles of what we're looking at, our awareness changes what we're looking at. When you remote view into the future, you also have that effect. So you are looking and changing the quantum behavior of the target in the future. You have to be very careful. There are protocols. It's actually very detrimental. You start looking at the stock market, and you start looking at who's going to win the Super Bowl. You'll start looking at events in the future. The correct way to do it, to where you don't change it the most minimal way, is actually detrimental to the viewer. So it's only something that should be on a professional level of remote viewer. Only expert remote viewers should mess with the future, to be honest with you, because you'll change it and you go, well, it's nothing like what I saw. Well, you changed it. You were looking at it. You changed it. For one, the people in the future knew they were being looked at. They behaved different. So that's very real. That's a very real circumstance of remote viewing the future. For one. For two, the best way to do it, well, I'm not gonna say. I'm only gonna do that. My class. There's a commercial.
I was actually that's what some related to what I was going to ask. Involving like huge chart collapse, but yeah, like zoom, zoom.
Well,
Like
outside. So think about it like this: like in the past, outside of time space, it's all like a choose your own adventure. Okay,
mhm,
but the future is still assembling. So the past assembled, we witnessed, we witnessed it, and it kind of is there. It's written until
yes,
it goes back and gets changed again. It's all one big malleable choose your own adventure book. The future is still assembling, and if we jump ahead in remote viewing, which is very possible, very doable, the guys are doing it. There's great results. You are changing the future. You're assembling in a certain way by witnessing it. You're already a witness to the future, and it alters it slightly. So there are ways to go about it. It's a more complicated than just going and making a blind target and remote viewing the Super Bowl in this year and see who's going to win the Super Bowl. It's more complicated than that. There's a lot of factors, and the farther you go into the future, the more you change it. So it's almost like it's a weaker signal, and you're a weak signal when you look at it because it's a remote signal, so it's a weak signal. When you look far into the future, it's a very weak signal, so you change it quite a bit. So if you look into tomorrow, you don't really change it that much. It's a strong signal versus your weak signal. But if you look 100 years or 10 years from now, it's a weak signal and a weak signal, and you have quite a bit of influence to it. So that's real. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of remote viewers don't know that.
yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I love that. I love all of that. Like yeah, but then again, like perhaps you want to address to some.
So the chat says you're looking good, and Don asked, "What was the thing he has to lose weight?"
Oh, so it's a binaural. So it's going to be a recording, and it'll be kind of. It turns out that there are brainwave patterns that in the binaural spectrum that you can induce. So with a binaural and a bilateral, and with subliminal post-hypnotic suggestion, you can induce brainwave states. It's this is a stat. This isn't new. And what I've learned by using Dan Winter's tunement to the Planck distance is that they become extremely effective. He's actually got the Flame in Sound app. He's got an app on iPhones on the iStore, so you can download it to your phone. But the app is, I'm not going to blaze on it, but it doesn't have a lot of presets in there for each individual. You got to do a lot of homework to use it right. And so I've done that, and it turns out you can induce things. So I'm making a suite. It's going to be a separate store. We might host it on Shopify. It'll definitely be on my Patreon. Right now, I've got a motivational one, a healing one, and a remote viewing one. I forget the one I'm working on right now. Hang on. I just finished one. It was motivational. So it's really neat because it's kind of puts you into an alpha state, then a beta state, then a burst of gamma, so that you can have some creativity, and then back to the beta and alpha over a 30-minute time with bilateral tones and binaurals. And it's extremely effective. Just listening to it, bounce around, working on it, I got more motivated. So the weight loss one will be a motivational one with the post-hypnotic suggestion of, hey, work on yourself, have some pride, work on yourself. And it's basically like a version of hypnotism with binaurals. So it's really, and the thing is, you can do it at your own thing. You're playing it in earphones or on your stereo, whatever you want to do. You play on it, and it puts you in the frame of mind to stay on it. Most people, and believe me, I've been overweight. I am overweight. I'm a fat guy. I don't care. I like eating. I've starved.
Yeah, and younger also.
Yeah.
But you're looking amazing.
They're wanting to know what your youth potion is.
This is why I'm staying out of the chat, you guys. I'll get a fluffed up ego. But no. So the idea is, in the times in my life when I was overweight and I wanted to lose weight, I'd go on a diet and start working out and doing stuff, and then it would fade. Like most people are like, man, I've been working out for 3 weeks now. I haven't lost a pound. And it's like, well, how long did it take you to get fat? Right? It takes a long time. But it would fade. You don't just kind of go back into the habits. If you train your mind, the main driver of your life, and these binaurals can do that. So that's the idea, is that you just listen to it all the time. You just listen to it. I'm going to put some cheesy, some decent music, like doo-doo-doo, some jazzy music in there, so it's so it's palpable a little bit. And then you can think about the music and actually go. You don't even need the recording. If you, after listening to it a lot, you can hum the song and go into that frame of mind. And what it does is it'll motivate you to stay on the healthy path, because ultimately it's a choice. And it's harder for some people than others. There's skinny people that will never be fat, and there's people that are overweight that have to really fight. They have to really give it their heart and soul to lose weight. But programming your mind to do so is the best way. So that's what I'm working on. There'll be a quit smoking one. There'll be a get in shape one. There'll be motivational. There's creativity one for, the motivational one. I haven't touched the subject of money, but people want to be motivated. We've been programmed to think money's evil or earning money's bad. We need to learn that we live in a money system. We chose to incarnate in a money-making system. You have to believe that you deserve that earning money isn't evil. You have to undo that. And that's why everybody wants more money, but they don't. That is the big barrier. You know what I mean? Your self-belief is the barrier. It's out there. Opportunities everywhere to earn. So I'm building these. There's just essentially high-powered, tuned to the Planck distance, binaurals, and high-tech stuff. It's like the next generation of the stuff. I'm making these, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very stoked. They work. They kick ass.
Yes, they do.
James Whitticus also asks, has Tony ever remote viewed Diego Garcia underwater facility?
You know what? We were asked to do that once, and I didn't fit it in. I don't think we have. Somebody mentioned it to me.
Dark stories with it.
Yeah, so we again, this is one of those sites. So this is like one of the most secure sites in the world. There's nuclear weapons there. It's a spaceport. It's a Space Force base. It's a spaceport. It's in my testimony. So I haven't really remote viewed or used other people to remote view my testimony per se. So no, I don't believe I have.
Yeah, and be caution to other people. There's a high likelihood of you getting targeted afterwards and attachment if you do.
Well, you're on their radar. You're on their radar, and there's probably defense teams there, and you're going to see false data. So I'm not after the target. I'm after the method.
Right. Now that you said that, because for instance, sometimes when I tune into information, I can see that when there is like a big gap in the story of that specific stage in like throughout human evolution, there are many layers of distorted, come out as distorted information, and then you need to clear that up, all those layers until connecting with the core of the information, And I do believe that that's what they are doing to a lot of the things that are truly important. They're packing it up with distorted information.
Yes, after projecting false information on top of it, so you have to sift through it. So we see that technique in many different things. Media today, social media. We see real information buried under false information so that you don't know which one is which. We see it in this community, in the secret space program community, in the super soldier community, in the psychic community, the spiritual community, and most importantly, the political community, that they come out with. So they don't fight you on your true information. Exactly. They bury it with lies around it so that somebody that's new goes, I don't know if he's telling the truth or he's telling the truth. They both sound good. And so, boom, you just walk away from it. You don't learn it. And so that's really what's going on. That's really the effective thing. It's the nonviolent approach to silencing people. They used to just kill us, but now we have the internet. We have witnesses. So, they don't do that anymore. They just bury us with false info around us.
True.
I forgot how we got on this.
And so like because we're near wrapping up, to go up based on series, your trash. You got to get some ETVs in there, on the show.
Yeah.
So because like the series has an ice interactive world in it. Did you ever come across things with like underwater sea monsters or things on the different Can you tell us a little bit more on the ETs you interact with as well?
No sea monsters. So they were looking for pockets of water. The mining crews were looking for pockets of water and liquid water. So I think there's gravitational forces that perturb the planet and keep the water liquid in some areas inside the planet. So I think there's great pockets of ice too, but they were absolutely said that there was liquid water, that miners were mining and broke through and got flooded and died, that there was liquid water that came out. So that was real. And then it was a folklore. It was like a urban legend that inside those pockets of liquid water, they found ruins of underwater buildings or technology of stone technology ruins left there. So that was like they wouldn't tell us officially that was the case, but that was like the rumor. As far as ETs that were there, I get asked that question all the time, man. I really don't remember a ton of grays, to be honest with you. There were reptilians, there were taller humanoids, there were human ETs there. There were ETs that looked kind of more like a human, but with a really perturbed head, like an elongated head with a ridge and beady small eyes, like a human. Like imagine a human with tiny eyes and like wide hips, big guys, and blue, gray looking, like a gray shaped head, bald head, very tall with dark blue skin. Those people, there were people that were pale blue there. I saw a guy that looked like a fish, almost like a fish human that was walking around. I saw a guy that I saw a guy that was overweight and kind of ugly looking, but looked like a cat right here. Looked like a person with orange curly hair and a cat with whiskers that went straight that way. It looked like a cat. So there were many different species there. We were not supposed to interact with them. So that was my order. I was not allowed to interact with them because I was a slave. Basically, I was slave labor. So they said, I could get in trouble if I walked up to them and said hello or interacted with them. And I did on a couple occasions, but for the most part, it was kind of like something unattainable. Like, do you see it? Like, how do you feel when you see a Lamborghini going down the road? Right? You go, whoa, that's nice. And then, well, I'm never going to have one. So big deal. I don't care about it. And that's exactly how it was with a lot of the lifestyle on series. Is I was like, oh, look, there's a couple ETs. I'm never going to get to hang out with them. So big deal. And I would just keep going along my way. And that was kind of my mindset back then. I was bitter because I had access to the society for the last couple years, but I didn't have the ability to participate in that society. So I was bitter against it, and anyhow, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Tony, the time that you were there in Sirius, when you came back, was something reflected at a biological scale besides the emotional one when you started remembering?
I honestly wouldn't know. I don't think so. It doesn't feel like it. Right. So it doesn't feel like it, but I wouldn't know, to be honest with you. I'm on the inside looking out. So, it may be could be pronounced. It could be, like I just thought I was a normal guy my whole life. And then, this happened and I got my memories back and I realized that. And then when other people get their memories back, there are people that have more memories than me, albeit very few. A lot of people have memories of participating in a similar program, but they have very few memories. And so I am a weirdo for that, whatever reason the MRI, I talked to Dr. Lee Merritt the other day and did a show for her, The Medical Rebel. And we were talking about the MRI and she was saying that it actually affects the cellular makeup, the atomic interaction in your cellular and plasma. so I forget her exact verbiage, but I was unaware that an MRI affects your cellular makeup in that way. But that's what happened. I got an MRI, and 10 days later, I got all my memories back. So, like I said, I thought I was a normal guy, and when I got those memories, I realized that I live in a world that's fake, and started down the rabbit hole. And here we are, 9 years later.
And on Sirius, in the pockets of water, have you heard or come across life that exists in them, as well as in the mining aspect, what they were looking for, like rare
Just
space elements?
nope. So they were mining. Well, so they lied to us often, kind of like our government, right? But worse. They said that they were mining to make space, to make places to build, for real estate. So they were mining out, looking for water, looking for technology. And they also said that they never found any life, that there was nothing alive when that happened. And I said, well, is there fish or something in there? What's going on? And they said, no, there's nothing. And this is from the other guys I was working with. So not from the official. It's not like I, saw it on the screen, and I didn't see an official statement on any of this stuff. That's from the guys I was working with that told me that. That's the memory of it.
And Tony, is there any relation, like besides the proximity in the orbit in between Ceres and Pluto?
That's a good question. Ceres is on an off-axis orbit. It's on a perturbed orbit. It's on, like the solar system's going this way and Ceres is going this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's in line. I don't believe it has anything to do with the Pluto orbit, but it is an irregular orbit. Pluto's is an irregular orbit as well. So it is off axis. So as if there was a collision at some point, or I don't know, but Ceres does have a strange orbit. I keep an eye on it. I look for Ceres in the night sky. I, affectionately am an astronomer.
Nice. And in your interaction with that, what kind of psionic abilities did you come across with various humans and ET species?
So there are some doozies when you talk about getting into the galactic society. When you get up there, so not only is science aware of consciousness, but they've perfected it on many levels. And so we had teams, and they were hybrids. They were human. Some of them were humans. A couple of them were humans, but they were hybrid ETs and humans that were made, genetically altered and created to be psychic countermeasures on the ship. So that is a very real thing, flying your spaceship in deep space, to have another spaceship come up and with psychics and scan the ship and see if it's a worthy opponent, if they can take your ship over and jack your stuff. So that's a very real thing. And so the ship had its own team of psychic countermeasures. So that, they had their own team of psychics that could scan and do those things. They could go to another planet and psychically scan what's going on down there, remote view it, if you will. And then when they interacted with other ships in space, in deep space, defend themselves psychically, a psychic defense. And so that was real. That was very real. And they were celebrated. So that team of people, they had, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody got out of their way. They came on the ship on their own. They had security escort. They were very, very protected, very, very highly regarded, the people that were doing that job. For one, and for two, there were psychics. So we had implants, and there was a mechanical telepathy that tended to give people headaches. Like there were machines that you could interact with and buy your tickets, and it was telepathy. And there was mechanical telepathy, and there was organic telepathy. And the beings with organic telepathy were very advanced. They could scan you. And there are other beings that can interact with you telepathically and get your whole life. So I always say this: married couples are telepathic anyway, right? So if you get married and you live together for 10 years, and you go, "Oh, thanks, hon. I was just thinking about a coffee and you just brought me one. Oh, thanks." That's telepathy. She knew. She felt you were thinking about coffee. So I bet he wants a coffee. That's a subconscious telepathic communication. When you live with somebody, You get the same bacteria, the same biome. You learn all their ways, and you get in tune with each other. Your brain waves are in sync. You experience the same highs and lows. That's a basic telepathy. There are other beings that are consciously telepathic, where I can sit here and in my mind go, "Hey, Sean, thanks for having me on. That's awesome, bro." And then we did that, and you go, "Thanks, no sweat, man. This is a cool show. Thanks for coming on, Tony." And that's the amount of data we share telepathically. It's like basic telepathy, clear, right? We would call it military grade on Earth, because we could say, you know, the missile is over there behind at this coordinate, this coordinate. That's what that's. However, there's advanced telepathy where the interaction is, where are you from? And telepathically, I get your entire childhood in a split second. So there are beings that are on that level of consciousness. So there's a food chain of consciousness goes higher than what we feel. We're the highest on Earth, as far as we know. But there are beings out there that can download your whole life in a few seconds worth of telepathy and move things and interact. And there are even beings that they don't need ships to travel, and they can change they can change things. You know what I mean? They can change this cup into a bowl with their mind, because they're aware of how everything, because they have the ability to map it in their mind. Our brains can't remember where every single molecule is in this cup. We don't have enough processing power to map the cup and change it into something. So there are beings that are on that level mentally. And that's the deal. You know, that's going to be one of the pills we have to swallow at post-disclosure, is that we're not the top of the food pyramid like we think we are, of the consciousness pyramid, for that to be specific.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, many, but perhaps not this time. There are many things that I could continue.
We can have you on for another show sometime.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'd love to. You guys are great. I'm not lying. I can't wait till we hang out in Sedona.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, likewise.
You're really fun hanging out before and having some drinks with. So what are all the ways people can reach you, like your social medias, website, and email?
I'm on Facebook. I keep an eye on Facebook and Tony Rodrigues there. People message me there quite a bit. I have to turn it off. I've had people that were kind of poopy to me in the past, and so I kind of filter out a lot of things. You can follow me on Facebook and send me a message. It's probably better to go through TonyRodrigues.com and send me an email. I check that email once or twice a week. So I've got like 7 email accounts. And to keep on top, I'm just working on projects now. And I've been on the road a lot this year. I'm settling down for the next few months and won't be going anywhere, which is great. And I'll get some of these projects off my desk finished, and just get back to work and get ready for the next year's speaking engagements, next tour. So, and I'm working on a book. My 4th book will be forthcoming this year in 2025. I've been releasing them around the new year, but this one will be later on in the year. I've got it roughed out, and I just got to get writing it. So, just working on stuff just to stay relevant, man. One day, my story will be small potatoes, because they'll disclose, and we're going to have a whole lot more to worry about than what happened to me. So, and I'm okay with that. So I'm working on other stuff to do. There's plenty of things to disclose.
Yes.
Beautiful. And here's your books. And can you tell us about Series Colony Cavalier and Beyond Sight? So go pick those up if you can. And
the other one is Project Star Maker. That's in between those.
Yeah, where can they get it?
So you can get it on Amazon. You can put me and Amazon or Series Colony Cavalier. You'll get them. You can go to TonyRodrigues.com. There's links to all 3. Series Colony Cavalier is the story, the linear account of the 20 and back. Project Star Maker is like the spiritual stuff that happened, and it's stuff that was difficult to talk about is in Project Star Maker. And then Beyond Sight is the remote viewing stuff that I uncovered after Inyokern, and I wanted to make sure that was in there. And apologies for the way the spacing was. It was a rush, and I didn't pay attention to my friend that told me how to do it right. My next book, I haven't got a name for it yet, but it's about what I've learned in my consultations over a few thousand people have come to me with ET, with fragmented memories, and they have the same common denominators for many of them. And I'm going to write a book about that because I think it's telling. I think people think there's only a few people that this happens to, and there's only a couple programs. So like, we were here. It bothers me that it's always either a Pleiadian or an Arcturian, or that's not the case. There's a much, much broader. It's not the name. It's not the Pleiadians. They're not. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just a small, one small street in America compared to what's going on really up there. Not everybody came from the same street in America, right? So to go to Hollywood or go into anything, not everybody's from the same neighborhood in America, and that's what everybody makes it sounds like. They're all from Pleiades. It's a tiny one street that's a few hundred feet long compared to the rest of the universe in the globe. You know what I mean? Like people, and this, I want to explain that. I want to detail that because so many people have come to me with completely different things that do check out, completely different accounts of contact and abduction and experiences. And when you really analyze them at the timelines and the way that they go and overlap, it checks out. And so the universe is a very big, very varied place. And I really want to, you know what I mean? Like that's the rock I die on, man. Everybody is just either, I'm a Pleiadian or I'm a Lyrian. Well, that's one neighborhood out of the whole U.S. That's really it. You know what I mean? It's one house on the end of the street. Is how the stars we see are minor compared to how many stars are up there. So we don't even see most of them. So anyhow, before I put my foot down, I'll stop there, man. So everything, you can email me through TonyRodrigues.com, and please do. I'm happy to get to it and answer questions if I can.
Cool.
So,
and what other projects do you have coming up and conferences? You're going to be at like we said before, the Rise of the Guardians conference in Sedona with Rion, and you'll meet all three of us here there. So sign up, get your tickets now, and they're cheaper now. And we'll see you there. We'll have some drinks and fun conversation. So come get to meet us. And these two will be presenting. I'm doing a workshop. What other events do you have coming up and projects?
Tons of projects. So I'm doing the audio. It's a byproduct of what I learned for the learning. I'm putting together a nutrition course for the Maple Street Learning Company, which is adaptive learning software that I'm working on. It's still a long way to go before that comes out. But the component of that led me to the technology of the binaurals and the audio. So those are going to come out in the next few weeks. Building the obelisk, which is a piezo transmitter and an electro transmitter and a dielectric. So that's going to be a really cool therapeutic device.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of different versions of it that do different things. I'm very hopeful. I'm building those. And I'm building Ganzfeld glasses, a Ganzfeld technology for telepathy and for remote viewing. So you can look up GANZFELD on the CIA declassified library.gov, the Freedom of Information Act, and you'll only scratch the surface. So I'm working on that with Dan Winter's Cascade harmonics with lasers this time, with light therapy and near infrared. So those are going to be in there. That's a technology I'm working with. I think that's going to be a huge leap in remote viewing technology. So I'm working on that. I'm really excited about the obelisk with the piezo transmitter. And again, that's based off that. They even have Dan's products verbatim installed into it for the piezo transmission. And they're going to be big. So it's the same as a Vogel crystal, but you can only get a Vogel crystal so big. These obelisks, you can make one 10 feet tall. So we really get a broad spectrum of what you can do in it. I'm working on those. I'm working on my book. I'm working on a remote viewing video series that'll be available. It's going to be expensive, but I'm putting it out because like I said, I don't believe in video. You can watch a video, you're not going to get of the gym. You're not going to get in good shape. You can watch an aerobics video. You won't get in any better shape. You got to do it. So I'm working on that. And then I'm working on a series on Dan Winter's technology to put it in layman's terms. So you can't understand what he's talking about because he uses a big word so fast. Even the stuff we talked about here. So I'm working on a video that's going to explain it one by one, step by step, so that somebody that knows nothing about it can get their head around charge collapse and phase conjugate pump wave charge collapse into the longitudinal array. So that sentence, I got computer animations, we're using 3D environments. Me and Dan are in VR talking about it, and I'm going to edit it and do that. So that's I'm kind of excited about that project, and that'll go out on social media. There's going to be bite-sized pieces for free, and then the main production will be for sale somewhere. Trying to think of what else, and then I'm going to have live remote viewing classes here in Sedona. We have a venue for that, and that'll be for locals here in Sedona. And then I'm in the UK in May for the GSIC. In the UK, we're going to have UFOs flying over. I'm going to be in France in August for the Recontris Galactiques conference. It's not finalized yet, but we're planning on doing another Odyssey Sedona conference in October. And I've already got some really cool speakers lined up for that, but again, it's not finalized. And we want to move it to a bigger venue with a hotel nearby so people can stay the night. And I'm forgetting there's another one, another few, but I haven't agreed to as many conferences this year as I did. Next year as I did this year, because I just ran myself ragged. It was like one a month of going on a trip around the world somewhere. And some of them were like back to back, and I was unprepared for how much energy that takes. And so I'm only going to do a handful of them in this coming year and work on my book and the next book after that. I've already got 2 books planned, and I just want to work on those, and then, some personal investment stuff, and that's it.
Well, yeah, you will be taking care of a lot of things, however, all of them connected, and quite excited.
Baby steps.
Yeah,
it's like a garden.
Yes, and as I was saying, as everything is connected, then one thing leads to another. So then it becomes really organic, and a perfect pace.
All the projects are like a garden. You water one at a time. If you only water one plant in your garden, the rest of them die.
Yes.
So it's like all the projects are like a garden. I water them all a little bit at a time. It takes longer, but they'll all come to fruition eventually together. So I don't want to let any of them die. I love them all.
Beautiful.
Exactly. How do people reach you?
Also through my Facebook and my email out hunuh.omnivision@outlook.com, and my YouTube channel YssaH Sleep, and my upcoming website by the end of the year, finally. So and also, again, quite happy to share space with you there in Sedona. It will be actually for my birthday, so we will have many things to celebrate for. Yeah, exactly. And based on putting together, Tony was saying, I call it the spiritual science, or science of the spirit. I give courses on plasma body activation, on removing implants by traveling through the quantum space, through the space-time fabric at a quantum scale. Also source code, translating source codes, which is your geometrical body, and then using holofractographic tech to unfold your reality. People know. Well, how about you?
I'm Sean Bond, founder of Sonic League, sonicleague.com, Sonic League YouTube, PSI for Psi, and sonicleague@gmail.com if you want to reach me, and do courses and online video products on different abilities you can learn. On my YouTube, there's free videos of various abilities and evidence of superhuman powers that you can then have into your subconscious and then gain the blueprint. We're going to be doing tours. The next one is Mexico. If you want to go to place of power and pyramids and give the place what it needs to thrive and grow and be protected, and then it will generate a bunch of energy and then constantly supply you with something that will build towards a superpower, then come visit us. We will also be doing classes there, and you can reach me for consultations, clearings, healings, one of the rare two individuals that can do depossession from a distance. So if you want to get rid of your blocks and limitations and drain and negative side effects of different things in the spiritual world and gain back your power, contact us. And if you want to see more of these shows with Tony, smash that like so it goes in the algorithm. Show Tony some love in the comments. Share this video with 5 of your friends. And get this more out there. That will definitely tell us, yeah, we need to have more Tony on. Get more Tony. And subscribe to both our YouTubes. Can you plug your YouTube channel as well?
So I started, it's brand new. There's only a couple videos on it, but it's going to be more. It's called the Remote Viewing Collective on YouTube. I started that channel. It's like 11 followers, brand new, but we've got a bunch of remote viewing stuff coming up. And I'm collaborating with other people on other remote viewing groups. And there's a lot of stuff in the works for that, but that's like secondary. My YouTube channel for Tony, I think, I forget what it's, Tony Rodrigues or Talks with Tony, one of those, Tony Rodrigues. But YouTube is fickle, and I got canceled off YouTube in 2020. You know what I'm saying? Like I got deleted big time. Hundreds of videos got deleted. So I haven't really been nurturing the YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'm on Rumble. I've got a small Rumble. I've got a few episodes on Rumble, but everything is through my Patreon. So you can come in and get access to everything, $5, see it all, see where it's at, and bounce out if you want. Like I don't get mad when people leave the Patreon. I get it. But most of the Patreon memberships are for live groups. Like I do Q&As, like little webinars. I do those once a month too on Patreon. That's tier 2. And so that's basically where I'm at. But the Remote Viewing Collective, I'll be building on that. Maybe next year you interview me and it's going to have, a million followers by then. So we'll see.
Yeah, and we'll look out for that memory one because that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know privately, Sean, when it goes live. I'll be like, hey, the memory thing is live again.
Yeah,
I'll let
please.
you know.
Yeah,
Yes,
and then send us all the links and we'll put it on the video description. And you can feel free to upload this on your channel too.
Thank you.
It's 2222 now, so we better wrap up. So can you leave the audience with any inspirational words of wisdom?
Inspirational words of wisdom, like inorganically. Look, the world has been nutty, and they've been lying to us in every direction. So the correct move is just to turn it off and find out, get in touch here and find out what's true right here. So everybody's telling the truth and everybody's lying as far as I'm concerned. And, and I don't mean that in some kind of vicious statement, but I mean that is, here's the answer. And so that's what remote viewing is teaching your intuition and your inner voice. It's your energy feel, what you're feeling matters. And so get in touch with yourself in that regard and turn off the BS. If it makes you upset, don't go back to it. Turn it off. It's that simple, because they really manipulate you by making you upset. And from the elites, from the government to the computer, to the AI, to the big tech, to the big pharma, to the girl next door, they manipulate you by making you upset. So turn all that off and don't be upset. And that's my words of inspiration. So life is short, man. You're going to waste it being pissed off. It's not worth it. You're going to waste your time worrying about somebody else that made you mad, and you're going to get them back. You're wasting your life away. Work on yourself. Turn it all off and work on what's going on here. I decided to do that. And I realized that my secret space program testimony only goes so far. And one day I'd be chopped liver, and I'm cool with that. So what I did was, instead of pointing fingers at everybody else and wondering about everybody else, what they think, I decided to not give a shit and just work on me and the stuff that I know. And that's why I'm coming up with all this stuff, the product, the binaurals, the remote viewing, the obelisks, the decoding of all the things, the conferences, all that stuff. It's just me working me, man. I don't care what anybody else does about me. I'm just me. You can say what you want, like I know there's people, there was a, pardon my language, it was an Tony Rodrigues. Excuse me. It was called the F word, Tony Fraud Riggs channel existed. And so, at first I was really hurt by it, but then I think about it, I'm like, you know what? You have a right to not like me. Go not like me. That's cool. I'm cool with it. Do you like you? Are you okay with what you did? And that's my words of inspiration. Are you okay with who you are? Because that's what matters. You can point your fingers at everybody else. It means nothing. Are you okay with you are you a dirtbag or are you clean, squeaky clean? Because that's what really matters. Okay. And at the end of the day, Tony is going to come and go. There's going to be another Tony behind me. But what are you to you? And so that's all that matters, because all I'm worrying about is what I am to me. And I tell you what, I like it, man.
Awesome.
I went in I was in a bad way most of my life. And I started looking at myself and wanted to look at myself in the mirror and know that I was okay. And I like it now. And so that's it. That's all there is. Worry about yourself, turn off all the BS.
Happy for you, glad. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you everyone out there for
Yes.
watching this video, and we share it
Thank
everywhere.
you. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Right here.
Yes.